at least on stage one.
On stage one only. This is Daniel Teklehamenotz, the Eritrean national champion, just adjusting the hair underneath the helmet. And he's a man last year who created some history in African cycling, becoming the first Eritrean to start and finish the race. He was one of two. Mahawi Kudos was also with him. In fact, there's two Eritreans again in the race this year. Natnel Bahan is also starting the race. But last year, Teklehamenotz, he had the King of the Mountains jersey, and he became the biggest sporting hero in Eritrea. It was a beautiful moment. He's a guy that you know reasonably well because he spent a couple of seasons with the Orica Bike Exchange team.
Yeah, that's right. When we were both with, at the time, the Green Edge team when it first started, even before Orica was announced, I was Daniel Teklehamenotz's first roommate. So when we were in the team camp at the end of the 2011 season, we were in Melbourne. I roomed with Dan, and one thing that people will have become aware of as they got to know Daniel Teklehamenotz is he's always smiling. He has got the broadest grin in the bunch, and whenever you see him, he's just so happy to be a part of professional cycling. And I saw him, I bumped into him at the press centre in Saint-Lô the other day, and again, that big grin, just so happy to be at the Tour de France after such a fantastic experience last year where he wore the King of the Mountains jersey for a few days.
And he feels a real sense of responsibility representing his people, so to speak, as he puts it. And he does it so well. He certainly did last year's Tour de France. And that smile, it's nearly as infectious as the smile of Esteban Chavez, the Colombian from the Orica Bike Exchange team. Paul Voss in the time trial position. Well, he's not waiting.
Maybe he has now decided to go on. He sort of wasn't really getting into it over the top of that climb in Avranches as we look down on the peloton making their way up the climb. Now at 4 minutes and 43 behind our leader. But Voss, he's probably had communication with the team director who said, listen, push on, make sure you get it, because if you don't take the next one, and Lee Howard does, and he beats you at the finish, it's all been for nothing. So push on, try and get on through to that next climb, which is also Category 4, of course, the Côte de Falaise de Champeux. It's not shampoo, it's Champeux. And it's, I actually just drove over it after we finished our ride. We finished our ride just before that point and went over on the motorbike, and plenty of people up there too. The crowds are really out in force. You can see on the screen. Also in Avranches, the French people, and particularly those of La Manche region, are so happy to see the Tour de France start in their region, and they really are out in force.
There's also plenty of American tourists that are here at the race that I've had the chance to see over the last few days, doing the tour of all the beaches from the D-Day landings. And we'll get a chance later in the stage to go through some of that extraordinary history from back in 1944. And a couple of days ago, I had the opportunity to just take a walk along Utah Beach. And it's hard to comprehend. And they've got a memorial there where there's also a museum at Utah Beach, just 100 metres from where the finish line is today. And there's a U-boat with a statue of 3 soldiers charging out of the U-boat. And by that point in 1944, all the allure of the World War I, early part of the recruitment and the adventure of going to the other side of the world, that was well and truly blown out of the water, literally. And the reality of war was clearly there in 1944. And the thought of, we're going to be in these boats, we're heading to the beach, the Germans are already there, and you're going to jump out and charge towards the shores. It's a frightening thought. It really is. And this is a memorial to General Patton, George Smith Patton, who was one of the leaders throughout World War II. He also served in World War I, but he is best known for his leadership of the US Army throughout the Allied invasion of Normandy in June of 1944. Before that, actually, General Patton went to the Olympic Games in 1912 as a modern pentathlete, and he was a great sword fighter, and he used to teach a lot of sword fighting within the army before going on to World War I and then World War II. But he was also famous for his philosophy on inspiring the troops with vulgar-ridden speeches and leading with an offensive attack. And he is well remembered by the French, who were delighted that he made his presence felt here in France back in June of 1944. He also led the charge throughout the Mediterranean and the invasion of Casablanca, likewise the Allied invasion into Sicily. So he's a man with an extraordinary military record.
Well, just before the top of the climb, so I was looking out to see some of the people that I rode with in there, some of them on the right-hand side, having a look at the riders come past. So thanks to the guys for from UPS for a great ride today. But I think they'll be marvelling at the speed that these guys are able to ride up that hill, because a lot of those guys I was with this morning were suffering.
Voss out of the saddle. He's in a big gear. He's using the big chainring at the front. He's muscling his way to the top. He'll be going anaerobic at this point. He knows how much power he can produce and for how long he can sustain it. And there's nothing that he can do about the chase from behind. At this point, he's riding to the numbers, flirting with his threshold, hoping it's enough to collect one more point in the King of the Mountains jersey.
I don't think he's riding to any numbers anymore. I think he's riding to the pain level that he can tolerate, right up into the point where he's about to blow up, but just not quite. Look, mouth open, out of the saddle, back and falling back into the seat again, squeezing every little bit out for that one solitary point, because he knows that is his ticket to the podium when he gets here to Utah Beach at the end of the day. No matter what happens in the crosswinds, no matter if he gets dropped, he'll be on the podium and he'll be in polka dots.
And you can see all those shirts on the side of the road. The publicity caravan has come through 2 hours in advance. Car 4 is the sponsor of the King of the Mountains classification. They've thrown the T-shirts out to the spectators, and they're cheering on Paul Voss to get to the top, collect another points, and move to the lead of the King of the Mountains classification. Voss is almost there. We'd love to take a look across the shoulder and see what is happening with the chase. It was Alex Howes of Cannondale Drapac who was the one trying to close it down.
He's weaving from left to right as he goes up. He's changing gears constantly, in and out of the saddle. And there it is, finally.
He's made it to the top. Paul Voss has survived. He collects another point, and it's almost like a stage victory. He sits up as if he has won the stage, and now we'll wait for the rest of his breakaway companions. But he's required at the podium presentation at the end of the day. Lee Howard again across the top in second position, but no prize today for Lee Howard.
Well, Lee Howard being more of a sprinter, he wouldn't be, I think, that familiar with how the mountains competition works, especially in the Tour de France, which he's also never ridden. He wouldn't have been aware that there's only 1 point for the winner and nothing for second, so it makes no difference coming across the line in second. And Paul Voss, I'm sure now he'll be looking forward to just going back, sitting in the wheels, taking a little bit of a break before starting to contribute again to this breakaway and trying to build their gap back out. As we now see, it's fallen under 4 minutes to the peloton. 3 minutes 50 for our 5 leaders. Any second now they'll be back together with 148 kilometres to go. Frank Schleck seemed to have something stuck in the derailleur.
And he was just advised by Shane Archbold from the Bora Argon 18 team, another one of the Kiwis in the race, one of 3 New Zealanders in this year's race. Good to see him making his debut.
The man known as the Flying Mullet, due to his neck hair, as they call it in some parts of Europe.
He's got a haircut straight out of 1987.
He must have watched Dirty Dancing and become a fan of Patrick Swayze.
It's right up there with Patrick, isn't it? Frank Schleck, the man who finished in 3rd place in the Tour de France in 2011 when Cadel Evans went out the winner. It was his brother Andy in 2nd position. Andy, the younger of the Schleck brothers, has been retired now for a couple of years and owns and operates a bike shop in Luxembourg.
Andy himself a winner of the Tour de France.
Indeed, in
Promoted
2010.
from 2nd place when Alberto Contador was stripped of the title. So the Schlecks with a great record in the Tour de France. Unfortunately, Andy succumbed to a knee injury that was recurring, and he could not get it better and decided to call it a day and hang up the wheels, which was almost quite a surprise for such a young guy to not persevere longer and try and get things right. But okay, I don't know the full extent of the injury, but did seem a bit strange to hang it up so quickly.
Can't help but wonder whether there'll be lingering regrets when he gets into his 40s and it's all too late. Paulo Tiralongo for the Astana team, controlling affairs for them and making sure that they protect their team leader, Fabio Aru, who's making his debut at the race after having won the Tour of Spain last year. Michael Matthews, he is one of the contenders for the stage tomorrow, and Michael Matthews, riding for the Orica Bike Exchange team, is well aware of the main challenges for today's stage. A fast finisher, perhaps not quite quick enough to contend with Kittel and Cavendish, but tomorrow he is certainly one of the favourites. For the increase in the tempo, and you can see how frantic it is, 10 kilometres to the intermediate sprint, but that seems insignificant. Tasato at the front, and there's been a fall.
Contador.
Alberto Contador. It is Alberto Contador with a lot of skin off on the right-hand side. That is disastrous for Contador. The whole season based around this race, and Contador, it might be over before it barely gets started. They won't be waiting for him. It was his teammate Tizardo who was right on the front, and he'll have heard it.
And I think maybe Contador was taken out by another rider on the inside. It was one of the BMC riders there.
Marcus Burkhardt.
With the yellow shoes, Burkhardt. I'm not sure if there was a tangle of handlebars. They came around the corner. But tragedy has struck for Alberto Contador. Going down at this point in the Tour, at any point in the Tour, is bad. On day one like this, with crosswinds like there is today, let's just hope he's okay and can get himself back to the bunch and there's no real damage. But his jersey is completely torn apart.
Well, there's no urgency in the chase. His team riders, his teammates, they're waiting for him. They're trying to encourage Alberto to get going. But Alberto is showing no signs at this point of really opening up the throttle. He's currently just trying to do the assessment, bike change. That's the first of the assessments. Next is, how is he physically?
And the question is now, what do his rivals do? Does the peloton now ease up? They will have heard what's happened behind. Or do they take advantage of the situation? We saw Alberto Contador take advantage once when Andy Schleck dropped his chain. Is this a similar situation? Will they keep going? And look at Alberto Contador here. Hopefully his jersey is the worst of his injuries, but definitely skin off. This is Geraint Thomas.
Well, he celebrated the 3-1 win for Wales last night, but he's not celebrating this afternoon. Looking for the team car for the bike change. Problems for Geraint. Rear wheel puncher. Just a change of the rear wheel, and it's the neutral service from Mavic. Unfortunately, Geraint Thomas has got no ambitions of his own, and the good news for the Welshman is that Froome has avoided the trouble.
So Alberto Contador, following his bodyguard Matteo Tossato around that bend, was just a few positions behind him, didn't quite make it into the wheel to get around that bend, and maybe took a bit of a risk to try and get around the corner and back into the wheel of Tossato, but then came undone. And unfortunately for him, as he went down, there was a traffic island right in the middle of the road, and his right shoulder took the brunt of that fall as he crashed into the traffic island. His team now dropped back. Team time trial mode now to try and bring Alberto Contador back to the peloton.
And they're now being caught by the group. But Danny Navarro is the rider in the red colours from Cofidis. He was not involved in the fall. He missed the split. This is Matteo Tossato now who's dropping back. If Alberto had been following the bodyguard, he would have been safe.
And it doesn't. Peloton, look at that long line on the right of screen, all trying to get themselves up to that arrowhead. You look at them spread across the road at the front, but at the back, it's panic stations trying to get back. And is the pace going out at the front? It looks like it is. A lot of discussion now going on at the front between Lotto, Katusha, Movistar, Ethics Quickstep. So the pace really come off. So it looks to be, fortunately for Alberto Contador, the peloton is sitting up and will allow them to come back fairly easily, but it'll all depend on what the damage is to the Spanish former Tour champion.
Well, it's been 7 years since Alberto Contador has won a stage at the Tour de France. That was back in 2009, the second time he won the race overall. Yet, understandably so, we always talk about him as a contender to win the race. If he gets back to this group, which judging by the composition of the peloton, the way it's starting to fan out, I think he will get back to this group. Andy Schleck, Frank Schleck, I should say, is the rider that has gone towards the front to slow things down.
Well, who I saw there was Fabian Cancellara, one of, you would say, the patron of the peloton, one of the elder statesmen now of the peloton. Now, his final year, but he's always been a rider to observe the etiquette, the unspoken and unwritten rules. And he would have got himself to the front and said, hey, this is a moment when we wait. You don't do that to each other. And I think he's right too. 75 kilometres to go. I don't think it's the right thing to keep going on with it and to Contador's disadvantage. Other people may disagree, but that's my point of view, and I'd say it's Fabian Cancellara's as well.
So if Alberto Contador makes it back and he has no broken bones and it's just skin off, that crash has still cost him a chance of winning the Tour de France, because his body is not just recovering from the physical effort, it's trying to mend all that. Lost the Tour de France in 2008. Was not up Alpe d'Huez when Carlos Sastre won. It wasn't on the time trial before they hit Paris. It was the crash that he had on about stage 9 and all the skin he lost. He just fatigued a little bit more than Carlos, who had no problems throughout the race, as Cadel was trying to recuperate from the strain of racing and from the crash. And Alberto is going to find himself in exactly that position this year.
It certainly makes it very, very difficult indeed. It's one thing to recover from the race, but to be recovering from injuries. And well, I hope for Alberto it is just skin and not something more structural.
The good sign is he's out of the saddle. So he's got some weight on the shoulder, he's got some weight on the collarbone, and the wrist is carrying the weight as well. So in terms of bones, it looks okay. In terms of grimace, that's enormous.
But he'll be quite relieved to be already in amongst the cars. He's got a lot of his teammates there, and he will see the peloton up in front of him. And he will have been told the peloton's sitting up, so don't panic too much. Come back and then get those wounds seen to straight away, because the last thing you need, you can ask Buani this, is a wound that's not treated properly that then gets infected as they now come through 5 kilometres to the sprint. The question now is, does the peloton and the sprinters teams want to ramp things back up, go for maximum points to the intermediate sprint? They'll have to catch the breakaway, which is now slipping back out to 40 seconds, re-establishing a lead because the peloton has sat up.
Well, that's where I thought he was quite lucky in terms of being able to get back to the peloton, because there's lots of others in the race whose race doesn't concern Contador. Like, well, Peter Sagan, one of his teammates, who's going for the green jersey. We note that Sagan didn't go back to collect him, the world champion, because he's got his own ambitions. And others are there thinking about that green jersey as well. So that just naturally increases the tempo. But now that Alberto has returned, the truce will be over.
Be a good way to run the competition. Win a stage, you're active. You're on, you're in it for green.
So with your second places in the battle for green behind Eric Zabel, that would elevate you to how many green jerseys?
I'm not sure. I actually haven't thought about it.
I thought we were going with the old Paul Keating, the former Australian Prime Minister, statement of always back self-interest. At least you know it's trying.
No, I don't go for woulda, coulda, shouldas with myself and my own career. That's how it was then. But I'd like to see the rule come in, because I think it'll make it a lot more interesting, a lot more at stake.
Well, there's 1 kilometre to go before they collect the first points in the race for the green jersey, but you've won 3 times.
Now, Lee Howard, he missed out on the mountain points. He tried to keep Barter and Voss under control going to the first climb, but now he's in his territory. Will he be able to wrap up the points? On paper, he's by far the fastest of this group.
Lee Howard will win this intermediate sprint to collect the 20 points as a mark of honour. 500 metres to go. De La Place at the front, followed by Lee Howard. It's then Alex Howes and Jan Barter at the back of it. Jan Barter's going to take a flyer. He wants the points. And Lee Howard, is he going to respond? Yes, he is. Howard picks up the slipstream of the big check. It's Barter who is at the front. Lee Howard is closing down. Alex Howes has drifted off the wheel. So too is De La Place. Barter looking to collect all the intermediate prizes for Bora Argon 18. Howard checks across the shoulder. And now Howard goes, making his bid to collect the 20 points. Lee Howard, bienvenue on the Tour de France. On debut, he collects 20 points in the race for green.
Nice job, Lee Howard. Well spotted. I thought for a moment he's going to get surprised here. He's not going to even be having a look. Right at that second, I was almost going to say it. Looked over his shoulder. As we look now at the peloton coming through, Marcel Kittel starts to signal his intentions. Andre Greipel takes him on. Greipel takes maximum points from the peloton just ahead of Marcel Kittel, who for me was not even out of third gear.
It was a sprint of who can use the least amount of energy to get the maximum points. It was a very conservative sprint without trying to give too much away or spending too much energy. And Contador is now in the hands of the race doctor. Looks like Leo Sayer. It's not going to be a comfortable night's sleep for Alberto.
No, he'll certainly be sleeping on the left side tonight, Alberto Contador. He gets his shoulder patched up. And Well, the medical team from the Tour de France, they're very accustomed to fixing injuries and dealing with incidences like this on the go. And they not only will have given it a bit of a clean out and disinfected at the moment, but as soon as Alberto's off the bike, they'll be doing that again. Probably his own team doctor will be the one doing it, making sure that every bit of grit and dirt is out of that wound and out of any others. You can't afford, when you crash in a race, to not treat any tiny little mark. And I'm speaking from experience because I once had a crash in Belgium where we did all the major wounds, shoulder, hip, knee, buttocks, the whole lot. It was excruciating. And there was one on my ankle. They said, and that one there, I said, it's okay, it's already dried up, it's fine. That's where I got an infection. It ended up ruling me out of the Giro d'Italia, which was 2 weeks later, because I got so sick. So you've got to really go over the whole body. It's like when you go and hire a car, you've got to walk around and check the damage. If you see something, take care of it, say it. Same as an injury. If you see it, take care of it, because it'll be the one that comes back and bites you.
Otherwise, you pay later. Good analogy. I like it. Matteo Tessato, I should say, and Meche Bodnar, the two riders waiting with Alberto Contador, who was getting heavily strapped up. Well, that didn't quite work. Let's have another go at it. De La Place plows away at the front, raising the stakes as a local hero. The Aussie flag for the Aussie that won the intermediate sprint, Lee Howard. Alex Howes is next in line in the green colours of the Cannondale Drapac squad. And then it is Jan Barter in the black colours of Bora Argon 18. So with 49.3 kilometres to go, let's now head across to Paul Sherwin and Phil Liggett to take you through to the finish.
Thank you very much indeed, Matt, and also to Robbie there. Have brought us now to 49 kilometres to go from the finish. As we're watching a peloton now, a little bit bemused by the fact that Contador's already had one nasty fall in this race when it was barely 3 hours old. He's all bandaged up and he's still in the race, of course, and they're saying it's just multiple abrasions. Same with Brent Bookwalter, who fell with him. But Paul, this breakaway now is going to have to concentrate on the 58-second gap to the two front runners.
Yes, but 58 seconds, Phil, at speeds like this, this is around about a kilometre. I think the main field have pretty much got that breakaway group pegged. They have been in the breakaway since kilometre zero, so they're going to be reasonably easy to pull it down towards the end, because although we're looking at 50 kilometres to go to the finish, that last 50 kilometres, we'll see the main field touching speeds in excess of 55 kilometres an hour, I think, just because of the fact that we're going to pick up an advantage from the tailwind, and then down towards the end a little bit of a nasty crosswind too. Used to the dangers of the day, they now realise it's going to get just a little bit more hairy as they start to move inland into the headwind, head down towards Sainte-Mère-Église, and then they will line up. And that's the interesting thing about today's stage. Once they start to turn left and head down towards headwind, head for the finishing line in Utah Beach, that's when they will pick up this roaring tailwind, and we'll see incredible speeds today.
Cars get themselves back in line.
That's Van Garderen.
Yep, change of colours, but it's TJ Van Garderen. He's been back.
Well, I'm just looking at the bike there, and he doesn't have a number on his bike. And interestingly enough, TJ Van Garderen, a little story about him as well as he gets back on there with the help of... Oh, crash at the back.
Arashiro from the Lamprey team on the floor here.
Well, you see, it's all nervous now, Phil. These are the moments. Look at that crash. And in fact, the accident happened because they were all slowing down to queue up to get around that right-hand corner.
And his sixth Tour de France, Arashiro, Japanese rider. He was the first Japanese rider to take part in the Tour back in 2009. And he's always arrived in Paris. That's a very credible performance by him.
Well, he should be lucky enough to get back on here quickly, because the man who is at the front of him there in the black and red jersey, that's TJ Van Garderen, shares the leadership of Team BMC with his Australian teammate. And although, in fact, rather interesting because Richie Port on that squad has been given the #1 slot. 91 for Richie Port, 99 for TJ Van Garderen. But when we spoke to both of them before the start of this race, they said, look, we're both going in as joint leaders for this team. And I think it'll actually be better for TJ Van Garderen because it'll take a little bit of pressure off him being the sole leader of the squad. And as long as both Richie Port and TJ Van Garderen don't have the proverbial bad day, they will both be up in the top 10 and vying and struggling to try and get themselves a podium finish in Paris. Richie Port, I have to say, so far this year has had a great season with a fantastic performance in the Criterium de Dauphiné, even though he lost out a little bit on the final day of the race.
The kilometres are ticking off. We're exactly 10 miles, 16 kilometres from the finish. These guys know there is still a chance when there's daylight between your back wheel and the peloton. There's the 15k to go.
Well, 15 kilometres now inside of 10 miles. You know, Alex House there, he was trying to catch the referee in the red car unawares because I think the referee's driver was going to sleep a little bit. And Alex House said, well, look, if I can just use that to get a little bit of slipstream to pull myself away, there's always this chance. He will not give up until the main field are right on his wheel. But, you know, the main field, the professionals like this field, they do not make mistakes. And they know how important today's stage is. They know how much of a chance they've got as a sprinter. Andre Greipel, Marcel Kittel, Mark Cavendish get across the line in first place. It's not only today. It's not a stage victory today. It's a stage victory plus a yellow jersey.
The peloton are under that same 15-kilometre banner. They're holding it 30 seconds. We're bound now for the town of Sainte-Mère-Église here, the town that played such an important pinnacle role in June 1944, where the parachutists secured the town, and 5 hours later, the Americans came through, and so D-Day was on.
There's still no acceleration in the main field as they all wait for the moment. The thing is, Phil, they want to have the lead-out train, but they want to have the lead-out train that has got a lot of firepower in the final few kilometres. You've got to have 5 riders left, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then eventually you want to launch, almost catapult your leader into a sprint. Just remembering a story on the front here, Phil, of Alex House from Colorado. In fact, we talked to his team before they announced the squad. They said, OK, we'll let you know who's riding. And Alex House is riding, and he said, well, can I tell them, can I tell anybody, can I put it out on Twitter, because he's quite a Twitter fanatic. And they said, no, you can't tell anybody at all, it's a secret until the last moment. And then he said, well, can I tell my mum, please?
This is the town itself, Sainte-Mère-Église, and a massive crowd has turned out. They've been looking forward to this day for not literally months but years, as the riders now bring them through. The English flag flies high. Back out onto the road now, which will take them straight to the finishing line. The locals were extremely worried about that left-hand bend. They thought they wouldn't get round it.
It's not far now, Phil, from that corner. This left-hand bend now is where the riders will start to pick up that very strong tailwind.
These barriers start just inside 2 kilometres from the finish line, about 1.8 kilometres to go, and that narrows the road because they haven't put them on the grass, they've put them actually on the road. Now, the most career Tour de France stage wins so far, Mark Cavendish, of course, has 26. Andre Greipel is in there with 10, and Marcel Kittel is all